No base building, no resource gathering, just pure strategy and glorious combat. Or so the back of the Star Wars Dominion Wars box would have you believe. Now, as a Star Trek fan, Deep Space Nine has a lot of really good memories for me. You see, during the final years of its run, I was growing up as a child and starting to earn pocket money. Now, there were many things I wanted to spend this pocket money on, but during 1998 and 1999, I always made sure to spend it on renting the latest VHS release of the series from my local Blockbuster, each containing 2 episodes. It was really good times. If you're vaguely familiar with the final 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine, you will know that it effectively told a long story arc of the Dominion War, as opposed to some of the more episode-to-episode content in some of the other Star Trek series that came before it. Now, for this video, I'm going to assume you have an elementary understanding of both Star Trek Deep Space Nine and the Dominion War, and if you don't, there's a lot of great content from other creators covering these topics, as well as the series being available to stream on several streaming platforms. Star Trek Dominion Wars was released in 2001, which was a busy period for Star Trek gaming, with no less than 18 PC games being released between 1999 and 2001. Games like Klingon Honor Guard, Birth of the Federation, Starfleet Command, and even Elite Force all released during this time. And while there were some mixed receptions, I would argue that all things considered, it was a pretty good time to be a Star Trek fan as far as the video games went. Now, while all of the video games I just mentioned released a generally favourable reception, Dominion Wars did not, with it receiving mostly 6 out of 10s, and honestly, I think this may have been generous. More on this later. The actual version we are playing today is the original PC release. It was never released for any other platforms, and as of the release of this video, is not currently available for sale on any digital storefronts, meaning the version I'm using is my original boxed copy. Now, not always, but sometimes when an older title isn't available on a digital storefront, it's generally a red flag as to compatibility with modern systems, and this is certainly the case with Dominion Wars. Normally in these videos, if there's a patch or workaround to play older games on modern PCs, I drop a link or make a comment with the information. But honestly, in this case, I can't, because there's nothing which I found or was able to tweak to make this game work consistently. My first attempt was playing this on my Windows 11 PC, which despite using compatibility modes and even trying some information I found on an ancient forum post concerning playability on Windows 7, I could not get to work. Then I tried playing this on my Windows XP machine, which generally plays pretty much every older game. I don't think I found one which I couldn't get to work until Dominion Wars. Now, I'm certainly not a developer and do not have any expertise to go into any amount of detail here, but from what I can tell, among other things, one of the biggest challenges to getting this game to run was its forced resolution of 800 by 600. Now, I eventually did get the game running on my modern PC. However, throughout the production of this video, I had multiple issues with everything from frame rate, stability, capture, and just about everything in between. I'm not criticizing the game for this. After all, I am playing on non-supported hardware. However, if you are intending on playing this game, please be aware that there are very substantial challenges in getting this to run on modern hardware. If you can get the game running, you are presented with an opening cinematic followed by a menu offering the choices between single and multiplayer. I've never played the multiplayer before, and from what I can tell, there is unsurprisingly no support for it today. Alas, this retrospective will be focused on the single player. However, it's probably fair to assume at least some of the elements carry over to the multiplayer. Story-wise, the game allows you to play through 2 separate campaigns, either as the Federation Alliance or as the Dominion, with each campaign loosely following a similar set of events around an overarching story. And honestly, the plot here is one of the game's strongest points. Without going into spoiler territory, the campaign kind of plays out an alternate storyline to that told in the TV series. And honestly, I was a bit shocked when I first played this, because the narrative liberties taken in this game are in some cases extreme. It's very difficult to believe this level of plot subversion would ever get greenlit in modern times without requiring some type of alternate timeline or mirror universe spin. All of the missions feel like they have purpose, and while they use themes from the TV series, the overall narrative direction goes in a completely different way. It's really good stuff and a testament to the overall writing of the game. Before we continue, a massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel. If you enjoy this type of content, please do consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel. With that out of the way, let's raise shields, rally the soldiers, and return to 2001 to remember Star Trek Dominion Wars. No matter which side of the conflict you choose to play as, the game is divided into essentially two parts. The first is the fleet setup. This is where you make selections as to what the fleet that you will take into battle will look like. Everything has a command cost, which is basically a pool of points that can be spent on the fleet, with the start of the campaign having a small amount of points which is increased as you progress. This is good from a pacing perspective because it prevents you from taking a battle cruiser into the first level and just wiping the floor. Firstly, you need to select a ship. Naturally, the more powerful ships cost a lot more points and will need to be staffed by a much higher level captain. Ships have 3 ratings: shields, weapons, and full impulse. And the last one is really important, and I'll get to why that's important in a moment. Once you've selected your ship, you need to select a captain, with each set of captains holding a rating which is tied to the level of ship they can command. For example, a level 3 captain can command ships level 3 and below. Each captain has 3 attributes of their own: command, tactical, and experience. The higher the better here, although the higher levels do cost substantially more command points, and in a nice touch, all of the captains are actual characters from the TV series. Next up, you have the ability to equip certain devices to your ships, which depending on the side of the conflict you're playing will vary. For example, there might be devices which increase your maximum speed or improve weapons at long range. Like with everything, you will need to carefully balance the command cost for each of these items. Lastly, you have the crew, which enables you to add command, engineering, or security team members on top of your ship's standard complement. To be honest, in my recent playthrough, this isn't something I really paid too much attention to, with the exception of 1 or 2 missions which require it. But if you are going for a capture-focused playthrough, you will need to pay close attention here. Now, on the surface, this looks like a pretty good system, and there are some things I like about it, but equally, there are some things I don't like about it. For example, in each mission briefing, your commander suggests as to what your fleet composition should be. They will literally say the exact ship names they suggest taking. Now, in an early mission of the Dominion campaign, it has you hunt down enemy freighters before they can escape, with the recommendation being 4 or so smaller ships. Upon entering the fleet screen, I made the decision to take strike cruisers instead, thinking more firepower will be better. After all, the game is giving me a choice as to how I construct my fleet. Only when I started playing the mission, I realized that the strike cruisers were much slower than the freighters, and I actually couldn't catch up to them and consistently do enough damage before they escaped. And this is where my frustration started. So after realizing this, I thought, okay, I'll need to change up my ships. Let's exit the level and try again. So I hit the escape key and was presented with effectively 3 options: restart mission, main menu, and quit to desktop. Obviously I didn't want to quit to desktop, so I selected restart mission. Only that just takes you back to the start of the space combat sequence and not the fleet planning. Okay, I'll try main menu. Right, so that takes you back to the main menu and unloads your current game completely. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if you could save the game upon completion of a mission, but you can't. You can only save your game during a mission. So to get back to the fleet setup I wanted, I needed to load a save from the previous level beginning, play through that level entirely again, then get back to the fleet setup of the mission I was stuck on. This design isn't a good experience for the player. Outside of the fleet planning is the mainline component of the game, the 3D space combat. Like with the fleet setup, there are things I like about it, but honestly, there are a lot of things I don't like about it. And it's not that I don't like the ideas, because there are a lot of great ideas in this game, but the execution, on the other hand, feels at times unfinished. Now, as a Star Trek fan, I fully acknowledge that I'm going to critique this game in more detail than someone who isn't. But likewise, I'd argue that when you market a game as a specific TV series conflict tie-in, you need to expect that your target audience will be tuned into these things. First up is camera and control, and this is a hard one to explain because these things tie into other mechanics of the game. Effectively, the camera has several preset options, which effectively equate to the distance from the currently selected ship. Now, for the most part, this works well. However, in any third-person shooter like this, situational awareness is very important, and this is something that doesn't work well. The map is very difficult to understand and requires precision mouse hovering just to understand which ship is which. Time and time again, I would be in a scenario where Allied ships were being attacked, but I couldn't actually tell where they were or where my ships were relative to them. In most games, there's a way to cycle targets or understand from the map who is who. There are 8 buttons for camera presets in this game and not one to cycle targets, making it somewhat of a guessing game when making tactical decisions. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Because there is no targeting system per se, there is no way to select waypoints which sometimes form mission objectives. For example, investigate this part of the map. So you just need to plot a course as close as you can on the mini-map. Honestly, if the game had targeting for ships and objectives, I think this would have dramatically improved the gaming experience. The actual combat is mixed. There are times where the game does a great job of capturing the space combat of the series, and combined with some good camera work, really shows what I assume was the vision for the game. However, other times the combat feels, boring. The game allows you to select a variety of maneuvers for your ships when engaging in combat, like circling the ship, following behind, hit and run, and so on. The problem is, during my entire playthrough, there was not one time that just sitting stationary and firing was not the most effective way to defeat enemies. And this is in part because at times they too will just sit there and exchange fire with you. This can stack poorly onto some objectives as well. There's an objective to destroy a sensor array in which you are given only one ship for the mission, and to the game's credit, the mission is well designed up until the point you have to destroy the objective, where you just sit stationary and attack it uninterrupted for over 3 minutes. I'm not joking when I say 3 minutes. I actually went and made myself a cup of coffee while this took place. Presentation is an interesting topic here. Graphically, the game is pretty good, with everything from the menu to the interfaces having an appropriately Star Trek feel. This is combined with reasonably detailed textures and environments for the time. All of the ship models in particular look great, with some small details like weapons firing from where they should, helping to bring greater immersion to the game. The environments are also well done, with a highlight being the Badlands in some of the earlier missions for each side of the conflict. Then there are the non-graphical components of the presentation, which I don't think do the game justice, and honestly, it's a lot of little details that in isolation wouldn't be an issue, but the fact that there are so many, it really compounds and impacts the perception of the overall presentation. When I say little things, when you save a game, it always pre-populates the same save game name, regardless of mission or faction. FED01AS1, requiring you to delete this each time to label your save game. This isn't a user-friendly design. Depending on your tolerance for these things, your mileage will vary. Overall, the presentation isn't bad, but it's let down by some small items which in my opinion should have been resolved prior to shipment. Now, there are no mixed feelings about the sound design. It's excellent. All of the Star Trek sound effects you would expect are faithfully recreated here, alongside a very good soundtrack which suits the overall combat theme of the game. Let's take a quick listen.
Cardassian fighter detected. Cardassian fighter detected.
Oh, and all the briefings are voiced by their real-life counterparts, really helping to make the game feel part of the TV series universe. I only wish there was more voice work from them during the actual missions. Dominion Wars is an interesting game. It has a lot of great ideas, but too often these great ideas feel incomplete in their execution. What's more, the execution doesn't feel lazy, it just feels unfinished. In terms of scale and immersion, the game is very good. Likewise, the excellent sound design really helps to tie things together, but in my opinion, these things in isolation can't elevate the game to what the back of the cover promises. If you're a die-hard Star Trek fan, you'll probably be prepared to endure the less than brilliant parts of this game just to experience the story, which honestly is really good. But if you're looking for a Star Trek game you can easily jump into and have some immediate fun, I don't think this title is for you. But that's enough from me. Do you agree or disagree with my opinions? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.